After season 2, I think that Monsters at Work has to be my favorite TV show ever. And I'm not even just overhyping it, but if you haven't watched this, please do yourself a favor and go watch it. This show was so good to begin with. Season 1 was such an amazing addition to the Monsters Inc. franchise, and it wasn't even technically a sequel. The last episode concluded where Monsters Inc. ended, so we never actually got to see what happened after Monsters Inc. The question of what happens next after this cliffhanger has been floating around in my head ever since I first watched the movie when I was really young. 23 years. No answer. And finally, with this new season, we get an answer. I don't think people realize how big of a deal this is. This isn't just a new season of a spin-off show, this is the official canonical continuation of a 2-decade cliffhanger. And guess what? Boo isn't even in it, which is actually a good thing because that's definitely something to let Pixar handle in a future movie. Not really for a Disney Plus series. Not only that, but I kind of like the idea that Sully visiting Boo again was just kind of a one-time thing and not really something he can do all the time. I think that if they were to do a sequel to Monsters Inc., they would probably have a considerable time gap so that Boo's more grown up and they can make a story out of that. But that's just my assumption. So considering that they were probably told by Pixar to leave that storyline alone for now, the story they gave us was just as good. The first season mainly took place inside of the Monsters Inc. factory, but they really went all out with this new season. We're visiting a new place in basically every episode. In the first episode, we get to go back to Monsters University and see how the college is doing 30 years after the movie. It does a great job of bringing the two movies together and making it all feel like one consistent story. This show really appeals to the fans of the movies and does an amazing job of expanding the world. Before this season, the name Fearco was only thrown around a couple times, but now we get to actually see what the entire factory looks like, and see their methods of scaring and how it differs from Monsters Inc. They introduce a lot of new characters, reintroduce some old characters, and also give Mike and Sully plenty of screen time. In the first season, it almost felt like a cameo every time they showed up, and the story for the most part didn't focus on them. In this season though, they actually feel like main characters. Johnny Worthington was a creative choice for the antagonist of the season, and yes, Randall too. I'm sure nobody was expecting that, but we'll get back to him later. It does such a good job of making Monsters Inc. almost feel like one big family. Monsters that had minimal screen time in the original movie are given more personality. The fact that they all play in a baseball game one episode as if it's a company field trip just gives them all a sense of unity. Rosie Levin, a character from Monsters University that doesn't even have a single line, has a little bit of a cameo. I just find stuff like this so cool. I'm someone who studies Pixar lore, so I knew her name and that's about it. But now we actually know a little bit about her. We see so many perspectives, the perspective of Fearco, the perspective of the media covering the events, the perspective of Tyler's parents. It really utilizes the fact that it's a TV show to explore concepts that they wouldn't have time for in a movie. The humor though, something about the humor in this show is just perfect. The show had me laughing out loud multiple times. Humor is just something that's so hard to get right, but in this show it just works so well. Either they have something so stupid happen that it's just funny.
Let's run! Run all the way home! Home? Why? Did I leave the iron on? Oh no!
Or a character just casually says something so out of pocket.
Negative. It's blurrier than the union stance on dating in the workplace.
When you really break it down, each character channels a different form of humor. Fritz is so unaware of what's going on, Duncan is a little too aware of what's going on, Cutter is too wrapped up in her personal life, and Val just lives in her own world. Then in the middle of it all, there's Tyler, who I guess you would consider the normal one. He's aware of how weird everyone else is, and something about the clash of all these different personalities makes it genuinely funny to watch. Other shows can take notes from this. Despite all the humor though, this show gets really serious sometimes. In the last few episodes, you get a real sense that something big is about to go down. It has such a nice natural progression through the episodes of being really lighthearted in the beginning and getting more serious as the season reaches its conclusion. It's actually really interesting to see Sully genuinely mad at Tyler. And through it all, there's this whole plot going on behind the scenes. Johnny's planning on shutting down Monsters Inc. and we get to see the return of Randall. This was one of the most surprising parts of the entire season. They didn't even imply in the trailers that Randall would return, but it was just the coolest thing ever. This also decanonizes the Boom Kids comic where Sid from Toy Story breaks Randall out of jail, which I'm kind of happy about because it created a lot of issues in terms of Pixar lore, but that's besides the point. I really hope that Disney sees the potential in making more Pixar shows. I feel like if they put as much effort into Pixar IPs as they do with something like Star Wars, it would really pay off in the long run. People get annoyed when Pixar keeps making sequels, but at the same time, I think that a lot of people also want to see more from these iconic characters that they haven't seen in a while. Making a Disney Plus series is the perfect compromise. It would have made a lot of people annoyed if Pixar announced they were making a Cars 4, so making a show like Cars on the Road was a harmless but effective way to expand the franchise. I think that Pixar is taking this into consideration because there's still that Win or Lose series that's supposed to be out at some point. So I think that they do see the potential in short form TV series. This season was just so genius because it created a plot that was so interesting while still having the bigger plot points untouched, so that a Monsters Inc. sequel could be made in the future. By the end of the season, Randall's on the loose, which means that they could bring him back for a sequel. If anything, the show really laid the groundwork for another Monsters Inc. movie. At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised if they announced this as one of the next Pixar projects, considering that Pixar appears to be going back to making sequels at the moment. So if that's the case, you heard it here first. Anyway, let me know what you thought of season 2 of Monsters at Work. Thanks for watching, and bye.